Let's talk fascinating deck building decisions made by MHA top cutters for the GenCon RLE this past weekend. I'm going to be splitting this video into two. Today I'll do the first half of the decks, and then tomorrow I will do the top 8. Before I jump into the decks, let me remind everybody I am giving away a box of Undaunted Raid. All you have to do to enter is make a UVS Ultra Spike or Vash deck on any symbol, send it to me using the Google form in the description of this video, and I will judge it based on viability and creativity, and the winner will get a box. The deadline to do this is the day I reach 100 subscribers. I'm currently at 74, so I'm 26 away. That could be a week, that could be 2 weeks, it could be a month. But if you haven't subscribed to my content and you like Universus, go ahead and hit subscribe because that's all I talk about. All right, here's an example list for Earth Spike that I made, but I won't get into that right now. Let's jump straight into the lists. All right, at number 16, we have Logan Macan on Good Jiro. And he is running a Futures Now deck, but he's also running Capture Evildoers. So we're only running 2 Futures Now and 2 Capture Evildoers. The Capture Evildoers is to get momentum for specialized sound waves, because you'll notice that this is not a Staff Strike Good Jiro deck. And there's some benefits to not being a Staff Strike Good Jiro deck. The main benefit is you don't have to run those weapon foundations to get the combo off, because the weapon foundations on Good are, quite simply put, bad. And now we get to play the foundations that we want to play that keep us consistent. And we get to play nice attacks like Specialized Soundwaves and Back Alley Haymaker. And if we need a Futures Now, we can always use Specialized Soundwaves to go and grab a Futures Now if we need. Or we can use it to go grab an attack. And then we also have this Earphone Jack, which I really like, because it gives all of our charge attacks 1 speed, and then Jiro's going to give it damage. So it seems like he really wanted a Earphone Jack out every single time because he's running it at a 3x. Number 15, we have Carson with Water Shoto Todoroki 1, and I didn't put a card that surprised me being included or excluded for this list because there's over 100 set 1 through 4 cards included, but what's excluded from this list is any set 5 cards. So I'm not joking. Look at the list. There is not a single set 5 card, not even in the sideboard. So basically Carson's plan seems to be build a wall, which Water is good at doing, defend like crazy, and then whenever he realizes, there's a crack in his rival's armor, then he goes in and takes them out with Shoto Todoroki's damage pump. That seems to be the strategy here. Now, Carson actually got 17th with this list at the Kissimmee, Florida RLE earlier this year. So this is not a fluke. This is a tried and true list. This is a tested and heavily played list. And if you watched round 1, Carson is a phenomenal player, and I was a little late to watching the stream, but I saw the last 75% of game 3, and Carson actually almost milled out his evil overhaul opponent because he was playing such great defense. So most of the foundations, nothing really surprises me. It's just your typical Water defense. On the attacks, I am surprised that there's no freezer burn, but other than that, everything makes sense. What does surprise me is the 3x Go Beyond. And this seems to be kind of a recent addition. I went into the deck history and I noticed that 2 Go Beyonds were added July 17th, and then 1 Go Beyond was added the day of the event. So this seems to be a recent change that was tested, actually went well, and then another Go Beyond was added. So I would love to know what he was picking up with the Go Beyond. If he was picking up a Frigid Heat Wave to draw cards, or a Grasping Tape Toss to guarantee damage, maybe a Tongue Whip to get the speed on all of his future attacks. Just a fascinating decision there. I also love the 3x Nullify. But I do think that Shoto Todoroki 1 is a heavily underplayed character. He takes a lot of skill to play, but he's very, very underrated at the moment. All right, at number 14, we have Nathan DeWalt with Void Eraserhead 1. We've seen Nathan top a few RLEs this year. We saw him top Kansas City and Florida, I believe, both with Momo, and Florida getting 2nd place. And now he's on Void Eraserhead 1. And one decision that I found very interesting is that he's not running a single copy of Spooky. And normally I think Eraserheads always run at least 2 or 3 copies of Spooky, since they can take down the speed and then switch the speed and damage and make the damage effectively 0. But instead, Nathan's opting for cards like Can't Escape Me and Villains Defeated. Can't Escape Me getting Great Deadlock, and Draw Hate, and Villains Defeated getting to remove a rival's blocked attack and gain 2 health, or drawing a card if your rival makes you discard a card. And here's the list. There's a few other things that I want to point out. One is that we are not playing any copies of Unbreakable. Both the Void Eraser heads that topped in the webcam regional were playing Unbreakable. Instead, we're opting for Stopping for Breakfast, some mainboarded action hate. And we are also, the co-list that was on the punch package for Void at the webcam regional was running totally Racer Binding, even though it wasn't a punch, because it had Powerful 3, and then your rival couldn't use the abilities on their character during the attack. But Nathan is opting for Rewind Throttle, which in Eraserhead is a 7 high 3. That's not very great for a lethal attack string, but it's one of the best pokes in the game. 90% of the time, your rival's not going to bother blocking that, and they're going to take the damage, and then you get a momentum, which you can use for rejuvenating, smash, hardened uppercut, repeated 100% smash. There's a lot of uses in this deck for that momentum. And if you're on a lethal attack string, it helps that Rewind Throttle. You can use it to selectively commit down an opponent foundation. So it definitely has its uses despite being low damage. All right, at number 13, we have Constantine on Evil Mimic. And he was not including a single copy of Trigger Transformation, which is very surprising to me because, now I have not played a lot of Mimic, but normally when I make a Mimic deck, the first thing I do is add Mimic, add 4 Trigger Transformation, add 4 triggers, and then go from there. Now this deck does have 4 triggers, but just 0 Trigger Transformation. Instead, it's got cards like Wire Arrow, 4 mid for 4, that says if it deals damage, add a tech card from your discard pile to the top of your deck. Imagine most of the times that was a box full of babies, so that you could then check the 5, check the asset, and go grab an attack. And it says add 1 asset from either player's stage to their momentum, so that could certainly help set up a card like Tetra Terror Onslaught to get the Echo off. I really like this card Chronostasis Trigger in Evil Mimic because you can go grab it on defense for the Breaker 2. That seems very good. One thing about this list that I do want to point out is that it's running a pretty heavy foundation count for most compared to most Mimic decks. We'll see in the second place Mimic deck that the second place Mimic deck was running 19 foundations and 19 assets and 19 attacks. So it was going 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. This list looks much more like a traditional list where we're leaning heavily into the foundations, but we have cards like Wire Arrow where we can stack the top of our deck with an asset if we need. All right, at number 12, we have Jacob Johnson on Fire Tokoyami 1. Jacob actually won he was the Swiss round champ, and he was the number 1 seed going into day 2. It's nice to see Tokoyami back at a top cut. One decision that I found surprising was that he was not including Ice Gliding at all, which is typically a staple on all of its symbols for defense. But this list was not really interested in defense. We were interested in killing our rival. Sometimes the best defense is a great offense. So we're using the set 5 card Lust for Battle, which says when it enters your discard pile, you can remove it and your rival's next check gets -1. Well, Tokoyami fills up our discard pile pretty nicely because we get to discard the top 5 cards of our deck every single turn with Tokoyami. So we probably are running through our deck very, very quickly, which also helps because as soon as we cycle, we can use Ignite and Firestarter, or even before we cycle if we find one of our Sugar Rush power-ups to take people down early. I really liked this. We're also self-milling with Revel and Defrosting, and we have cards like Aggressive Temper, which I believe when it's destroyed, it has an effect, although I can't quite remember. The one of Healthling Javelin was pretty cool. It's a attack that gets really good if you have 10 or less cards in your deck, which this deck is going to get to 10 or less very, very quickly. All right, at number 11, we have Maxwell on Life Recovery Girl. And I actually found it really cool that Maxwell's Life Recovery Girl list and Travis's Life Recovery Girl list, which we'll see tomorrow, are very, very different. One, Maxwell's is a lot smaller. Travis was running a Recovery Girl that had like 90 plus cards, if I can remember, and it was mostly on the punch package, and it was including cards like Blood Transfer and Forceful Blow being getting to Powerful 4, and then of course Recovery Girl can make that into a throw if she needs. And if it's blocked, you can add a foundation to your hand, which is nice for Recovery Girl since she's blowing up her own stage and she's always trying to heal back up. But instead, Maxwell is running throws just at the very beginning. So he is not waiting until later in the game to make these massive throws, although he certainly will later in the game because he's running repeated 100% smash with Powerful 3 as a great momentum outlet for all of the throws that will be going to momentum. But he's not waiting until then to get started. He's got the overhead reversal building in, 0 gravity lift, and he's got ways to add damage to these throws with self-sacrifice, full-on attack mode, tight lipped, carbo loading. just lots of ways. And then most of the other foundations are pretty much this is what you would expect from a recovery girl. And of course we got Ruthless Mockery here and some focus attacks to come in because your opponent won't expect them when focus attack isn't played game 1, and then you can bring them in for game 2 because everything's a mid except for, well, I guess there's only 12 mids, huh? That's interesting. That's a interesting surprise attack move. All right, number 10, we have Fire Rapa played by Jonah. And now, we just saw the Fire Tokoyami list. If you thought that list was aggressive, this list is extremely aggressive. We are playing 0 defense. We are not interested in cards like Heroic Lineage and I'll Protect You. Every single card in this Rapa list is basically either drawing or doing something similar to drawing. Like Window Shopping says form flip. Look at the top card of your deck. You can play it as your next form. And sometimes this is helpful just to flip because Jonah was playing 4X Prehensile Tail, and he was probably needing to get 3 face-down foundations other than Prehensile Tail so that he could use Tail's effect. But everything pretty much flips to either draw cards or cycle cards, or like Window Shopping, play a card from the top of your deck. Right, we got Calling for Backup, Latent Skill, Prehensile Tail, Big Appetite. Big Appetite's really funny because we're always going to be discarding a card. Well, most of the time, unless we're playing a 7-hander, right? But he didn't care. Flip, draw 1, discard 1 was good enough, right? We're just trying to draw like crazy. This is a very, very compact list. It's trying to win on turn 2. It's trying to just find the attacks, play all the attacks. Because Rapa, no matter how he checks, he's going to be playing all the attacks that he can find. And what's really cool about this list is you get these little loops with like, play a Blue Flame Palm Strike, get a momentum, play a Bullet Punches, it deals damage, use Rapa to do the Bullet Punches again, put this in your momentum, flip Prehensile Tail, go and grab this, then echo the Bullet Punches. Oh, sorry, I guess because we put this in our momentum. Oh, and we use this to get a momentum. So then we're going to echo Bullet Punches, then we're going to play this again and get a momentum, and then you can just do little loops like that to where you can play an attack twice with the Prehensile Tail. What's cool about Hardened Barrage is that you can then unflip your Prehensile Tail and just keep going and, unflip your Prehensile Tail, flip your Prehensile Tail, grab it, play Barrage, unflip it again, use it, grab it, and Bullet Punches is always putting your attacks back into your momentum. It's a very cool little combo. I'm not sure I explained it very well, but I attempted to. And then we have Sugar Rush Power Up to add damage, capture evildoers to get momentum to start the momentum chains that this list is capable of, and it can be used as a card pool clear if we need it. So very, very aggressive list. I'm going to have to go back. I think this list was on stream a few times, and I did not go back and watch it, so I need to go back and watch it. All right, at number 9, the last deck for today, we have Death Ochako 2 by Brian Garza. Now, I actually played Brian round 7 of Nationals last year. He was very, very cool. And Brian also topped the Kansas City Regional License exam with Ochako 2. So Brian might be one of the most experienced Ochako 2 players in the game. So I took a look at his Kansas City list, and I wanted to see how it evolved after Set 5 was released and going into this event. And one of the big changes I saw was that in Kansas City, he was running 4x Turn to Dust, and now he's only running 1x Turn to Dust, and he's replaced the other 3 by adding in Touch of Decay. Touch of Decay saying, commit 1 foundation. If it's completely blocked, add it to your hand, which is nice to, of course, get the attack back and clear your card pool. But also, since Brian is playing Stun Grenade, it's going to add to Stun Grenade's stun rating. So now we have 2 cards that can increase Stun Grenade's rating with Touch of Decay and Nitro Explosion. And of course, Ochako 2's just own effect, being able to pick something up. And if it's not blocked, you draw 1 card. So either way, you are getting a card in hand from playing Touch of Decay. Very, very cool. And it goes along with the stun from the... there seems to be a stun theme here. Some other changes that were made is Go for the Win was taken from a 3x to a 4x. Battle Arena was taken from a 1x to a 2x. And then the only Set 5 card I see that we added is Learning to Harden, which of course says if you destroy it, you get to draw a card, and you can commit it for -2 speed or +2 damage. But we have a lot of cards here that help us draw now with Learning to Harden, but we're also playing latent skill and stun grenade and vial seizing. So a lot of really cool things going on in this list. And that is going to do it for part 1. Join me tomorrow and I'm going to go over part 2 and all of the top 8 decks. I hope you enjoyed this and that you found this as fascinating as I did. It was a lot of fun to make. I love looking at these deck lists, putting myself in the player's shoes and trying to think, why was these decisions made? Because it's not just about the cards that are included in a list. It's about all the cards that were excluded and why. All right, guys, I'll see you tomorrow for some more deck list reviews.